Hello, hello, and thank you for attending the 2021 Black Ink Book Festival. My name is Rhonda McKnight, and I will be your moderator for this session. This is a panel for the burgeoning writer. During this panel, Black Ink authors will answer questions about their transition from reader to author, reader, author. As authors continue to be readers, and how aspiring authors can make that transition in this current publishing arena. Okay, so you can ask the panelists questions. We have chat set up. We will check for questions in the Q&A. I'll try to keep an eye on questions that are actually in the feed. We welcome your questions, and so we'll go ahead and get started. Like I said, my name is Rhonda McKnight. I'm your moderator. I am the author of 16 women's fiction novels and novellas. I have been traditionally published, and I am currently an indie published author. So I've gotten to do both sides of the publishing space. I've also, for a short period of time, acquired women's fiction books for Brown Girls Books, which is a boutique publishing house. So I work as a freelance editor and just sort of kind of do everything but the marketing stuff. So I hired an expert for that. But that's a little bit about me. And so I will let you meet my esteemed panel. And we'll start with you, Vanessa Womack.
Good morning, everyone. I was just posting a greeting in the chat box because I'm so delighted to be here with so many distinguished writers and authors. This is my first time attending such a festival, and I certainly had an eye on this Charleston African American Book Festival last year after I published my first children's book, which you can see in the background, entitled Emerald Jones, the Fashion Designer Diva. And in this book, I merge math and fashion, as it is focused on ages 8 to 12, and with emphasis on trying to get students interested in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEAM, adding the art. It's not my first book I've written. I wrote a book 10 years ago, a novel called Paint the Sky Purple. And it started off as a business book, but it really transformed into the life of a young woman who was trying to crack the glass ceiling in the metropolitan areas, New York, where she worked. And it goes into a lot of diverse characters, and it became very popular around women in my church and community because it has so many diverse people and relationships. So I'll just leave it at there. I am from Richmond, Virginia, and I'll just shut up right now so that other people can have a chance to talk.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so next we'll have Jessica Mack.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jessica. I graduated from College of Charleston in 2019, and recently I was working as a publishing associate for Palmetto Publishing Group, a company that helps authors to self-publish. But now, full-time, I'm working on writing my books and other creative endeavors, and I'm specifically working on writing a novel called Guardians of Mass and Memory. I'm in the editing phase right now, and it is an Afrofuturist fantasy YA novel that I'm going to be publishing in June 2021.
Awesome. Okay, Sabria Robinson. Sabria? Okay. You're still muted, Sabria. There you go.
There we go. Sorry, my button was lagging. Hi, I'm Sabria Richardson. I'm the author of When the Sun Disappeared. It's a young adult fiction novel, novella, currently being classified. It's my first book. This is my first time at this festival. It focuses a lot on mental health and suicide and other taboo topics, especially in the African American community. I'm a psychology major, so it ties into what I want to do. It started as an assignment for my therapist. So it started as journals, and I just turned it into a story. I finished it during quarantine, so it's my version of my COVID baby, and I just published it this last September. Okay.
Awesome. Okay, next up we have Bernard Powers.
Yes, good morning. Good morning. And how wonderful it is to be with you all this morning. So I am Professor Emeritus of History at the College of Charleston and Director of the Center for the Study of Slavery in Charleston. And I'm also the interim CEO for the International African American Museum that we're building here in Charleston that we expect to be open in 2022. So we want to see all of you all come and visit us numerous times. So I am a nonfiction writer. I write about history. My work focuses on different aspects of African American life in South Carolina. And I have published 3 books. And the latest one is an edited collection. Let's see if I can put this up. Yes. There it is. An edited collection of essays. The title is 101 African Americans Who Shaped South Carolina. And there actually are 101 entries in this book. And it consists essentially of a series of biographical vignettes of important African American contributors to life in South Carolina, ranging all the way from the earliest time, slavery, coming through emancipation and Reconstruction. We look at the way in which individuals adapted their lives and created institutions to adjust to Jim Crow life in America. And then there are some entries that focus on civil rights, the civil rights era, and then finally, the New South, the modern period, culture and politics. So I will end right there and just make an opportunity for the next person. Thank you.
Okay, next we'll have Seisha Wright.
Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me.
We can.
Okay, good. All right, so my name is Seisha Wright. I am new to the Charleston Black Ink Festival this year. I have been trying ever since I first wrote my book. A lot of people were mentioning it to me and saying, you got to register. And every time they brought it up, it was after the registration was already filled with authors. So I'm really excited to be here this year. I do have my little one with me right now. I kind of had this timed out and planned where he wouldn't be on the camera and he'd just be playing or sleeping, but he's teething. So, you know, things don't always go as we plan them to. But I am an author of 3 children's books. I have, the first one is Layla Perseveres. The second one is Malik Chooses Generosity. I'm also a teacher here. I teach in Berkeley County this year, but I was teaching in Charleston County. I teach 2nd grade, which is the inspiration for my first and second books, or actually all of my books. The third book is a digital book, and I have my nephew who is in middle school do the illustrations for my third book. I'm really excited to be here and to learn about the other authors and publishers and editors that are out there.
Okay, awesome. Next we'll have Preslacia Williams.
Hello, everyone. My name is Seisha Williams. I am a novelist. I have 2 full-length novels that I've have published or are going to be published very soon. The first one is Healing Hannah's Heart. That was originally published in 2019. And the second one is this book, A Low Country Bride. And this book will be released on June 1st of this year. And this book was originally inspired by the time that I spent living in Charleston, South Carolina. I am a 2005 graduate of the College of Charleston in their public administration program. So the setting of Charleston, as well as the Black history of Charleston, is what inspired me to write this novel. And I'm just very happy to be here and to connect with everyone.
Awesome. Great. Okay, and then we have Griffin.
Greetings, Black Ink Festival 2021. It is a pleasure to be here. This is also my first time as an author here, and I've been having a wonderful time gleaning from the other authors and the resources available. So thank you all for having me. And just a little bit about me. I'm from Durham, North Carolina. I published my first book, self-published, in 2017, The Superhero's Guide to Dominating Their Universe. However, during the pandemic last year, I self-published 3 books called Black Hair Love book series. This is Black Hair Love for teens and up, which is actually my son's on the cover. He inspired me. I have 3 boys, and we always had the conversation of good hair, bad hair. And normally it come from school and they'll come home and one would have girls saying, hey, you have good hair, and the other one didn't get those comments. And I wanted to write something that affirmed all Black hair is beautiful hair, all textures, just all the uniqueness of our hair. And I didn't see that out there. So I want to do 3 books, one for all ages. So I have the preschool book. It's called Black Hair Love for Preschoolers. It's a picture book. And you see big, beautiful afros and beads and braids and things of that nature. And then I have the middle book right here, and it's called Black Hair Love for Juvenile. And once again, this is for teens and adults. It's transformative literature for all ages, beautiful poetry, words that I wish someone told me.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, I think we've lost a couple of our people. Just checking. I don't see them in the feed. Natalie Huff. I think if I don't see a video, maybe you're not here. Natalie Huff. And Leah. Well, not Leah, but Natalie. Okay, so we're going to go ahead. So what I'm going to ask our attendees to do is fire away your questions. There is a Q&A section. You can put them in the feed. You can raise your hand however you want. But until I get a couple of questions coming in, I will, I'll just ask a few questions, okay? So we'll get started. I'm gonna ask a couple of the authors to share the the thing that they have learned that would have been the best piece of advice they could have received from someone else about being a published author that no one ever told them. And I'm going to throw that question to you, Vanessa Womack.
Well, there are quite a few things I can think of. And the first thing is, don't expect a publisher to pick up your book and run with it. Established publisher, the traditional publishing route. Do your research. Do your research, because it's very important to know that once you put your blood, sweat, tears, writing, brain, words, and time on paper, a lot of people, or you would think, oh, this is going to be a best-selling book. It's the best-selling book for you in your mind, but you have to pursue all efforts to put it out there. And expecting to have your book picked up by a publisher, it's not unreasonable, but also look at other options like self-publishing and do your research. Do your research. And I say that from a background. My first job many years ago was at McGraw-Hill. And I thought, wow, this shouldn't be a big problem. I'll just reach out to the people I knew in the publishing world in New York decades ago. But at that time, when I reached out to someone with, and I won't say the name of the publishing company, and she talked to a couple of agents, and they said, basically, Vanessa, this is not the genre they're looking for. And all that to say, don't be discouraged. Please don't be discouraged. Keep going at it.
Okay. And I'll also throw that question to you, Preslasa.
Hello. So I started writing fiction in 2008, and it's 2021, and this will be my first book with a what they call the Big Five publishing house. So I received a lot of advice along the way. The two things that I could think of off the top of my head, which no one ever told me, is as soon as you sign a publishing contract and you want to get endorsements from your book with other published authors, and endorsements basically means that a published author, someone who's farther ahead of you on their career path, they would read your book and then they would provide an endorsement for it, like a quote, and the publisher would use that for marketing. They would use it on the retail sales pages or on the back of the book, which is like, as in the case of this copy of A Low Country Bride. So as soon as you sign your publishing contract, even if you don't know your pub date, your exact pub date, start asking around, asking published authors for if they would like to spend time reading and possibly endorsing your book, because you have to show them the common courtesy of giving them time to read it, making that choice of whether or not they want to endorse it. And that takes time because they have their own deadlines to meet as well. So if you need endorsements for your book, go and start doing that as soon as you sign your publishing contract and start searching. And in the time up to that moment when you get to sign a publishing contract with a publisher, build those relationships with published authors, even if you're not yet published. Build those relationships already. You can do so now in the digital age online. Connect with other published authors, read their books. You can even send them emails and say how much you enjoyed reading their books, and build those relationships now so that when the time comes for you to get your book endorsed, they would already know you, they would be amenable to you, and it would be easy for them to say yes to you. So that's my advice.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, I'm also going to toss that question to you, Jessica.
Okay, so I believe that the idea of doing a lot of research is particularly helpful, because when you're just writing and you're in your own world or in your own journal, it's amazing and it's great. But if you don't look into what the industry has to offer you, whether that's going the traditional publishing route and querying and all this stuff, or if you're going to self-publish, you really need to understand what both of those worlds offer and how much control you want to have in either path that you go. And that's one thing that I really learned at my previous job, because I would have to guide authors that were self-publishing and talk to them about the fact that if you're self-publishing, you're your own social media team. If you can't afford an editor, you would have to acquire those skills or see how you would acquire those kinds of skills. So again, I would emphasize that doing your research and seeing what it means to pursue publishing and writing, and whatever route that takes you, whether it's traditional or self-publishing.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so we've got our first question, so I'm going to go ahead and put that out there, and then I'll get back to some of the questions that I have for the panel. And that is, and we have quite a few people who can answer this question, how do you find an illustrator for your children's book? And I will let anyone who's on the panel who's published a children's book chime in. Sasha, okay? Seisha, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. So I did want to say, like, initially for my first book, I had it all planned out, and I knew I wanted to use a local artist. I wanted to use a Black artist to do my illustrations. And so I kind of put it out there to some friends and family members. And my brother actually knew someone from college that was a great illustrator. And so I reached out to him and I told him what I wanted. I paid him ahead of time. And I told him my deadline, and he kind of strung me along. And so I got really frustrated, and I started thinking, well, what can I do? How can I find an illustrator? And so I started Googling some things, and I ended up finding my illustrator through freelancer.com. And I went on freelancer.com and I kind of looked through different portfolios of illustrators, and I had my budget of what I wanted to spend. And I used my illustrator, somebody from India, for my first two books. And then the third book, I ended up just using my nephew because he's a great artist as well. And he's growing up, he's getting older, he's in middle school, and I wanted to give him a chance to do that. So there are a lot of different venues or avenues you can use for finding an illustrator. Of course, you can always use local people or friends or family members if you know of any. There are lots of different programs that you can use. I really liked using Freelancer because you could see what the person did. You could see the reviews that other people had written about them, and you can set your price on what you want to pay for an illustrator. But that's my story.
Okay. All right. And what about you, Son?
All right. Yes, I highly recommend Instagram. I also looking for Illustrator, and all of my illustrators have come from Instagram. My first book, I have 6 different illustrators, and the youngest is 6 years old. That was purposeful. But you find a lot of artists and hungry illustrators on Instagram, and you create a wonderful relationship with each other. And I don't pay for the images until the work is complete. I use PayPal so that it's safe transition. But also my last book, Black Care Love, an artist from your own South Carolina. Her name is Igia Charles. I don't know if you all heard of her, but she is very popular in South Carolina. And the state has actually commissioned her to do a lot of murals around South Carolina. And she's from Columbia, South Carolina. But she already had her work. This picture right here is called Black Boy Joy. And I went on Instagram looking for someone who could capture the essence of our hair, the different textures, the different styles. And I went on her Instagram page and she blew me away. And I reached out to her and she was delighted with what I was doing, the poems about Black hair. And she had just came off of a fast and we just connected and vibed and we collaborated. And it was beautiful, beautiful collaboration. So reach out to artists on Instagram. And I hate to use the term, there's some starving artists, but people really ready to provide you what you need.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is do your homework, do some research, set a budget, maybe a budget, and maybe based on what Sasha said, a contract with a time frame on when you need the deliverable. So that's great. Okay.
This is Vanessa. I'd like to add that get references from the illustrator, from the authors who have used that illustrator. That's what I did. I vetted my illustrator because I wanted to find out what was the working relationship between the illustrator and the author, and how satisfied they were with the illustrator's work, and how was the process. So do some vetting, and just like you would hire a contractor, you want to get some references.
Okay, that's great. And Vanessa, while you're with us, I want to ask this question as someone who's never written a children's book, but is always concerned about copyright issues with respect to images. And hopefully you can answer this. If you can't, someone else can. But how do you protect yourself from making sure, first of all, that the artwork that you've acquired for your book, it belongs to that artist, in particular if you're using a service like Fiverr or Freelancer, because that would seem to be an important concern, I would think, for illustrations.
Well, I know that my illustrator has done many, over 100 illustrated books, and I've talked with her. I even know where she lives. Well, not physically, but she does her own work, and the work that she's done is now mine, and that was in the contractual arrangements. So I know that now, do I need to go out and copyright every image in Emerald Jones and the next book? I'm open to advice, but I have access, and those are mine. And she made that very clear. You can use these however you want.
And it sounds like you had a contract. And so I just want to say that to Teresa was the person who asked us this question. It sounds like Vanessa has a great relationship. She has someone who's local. Just when you get into using people who perhaps are not local or people that you can't put your hands on, or if you've decided not to use a contract, just my advice would be to just be careful to make sure that you know who you're dealing with and that these images were created by them, because otherwise, no matter what, when you publish a book, even if you use a stock photo from, let's say you purchase a book cover from a service like Upwork or Fiverr or any of these other things, if that person does not purchase the stock photo, let's say they get it from secondhand from somewhere, and they make a book cover for you, you are liable for that book cover. You really don't have a recourse to go back and say, oh, well, this is my receipt. I bought this from this Fiverr person in the Ukraine. Well, they're in the Ukraine. And so U.S. copyright happens right here in the good old United States of America. And so just that is my advice as someone who hasn't written a children's book, but who has independently published, 12 or 13 books and had to purchase images and have heard horror stories about people who did not own the rights to stock photos and things like that. So just be careful to, make sure that you're protected. That's advice that I have for any author with respect to any type of images that you use. So
I do want to chime in on that one. Similar to what Vanessa was saying, because I told you guys I got mine from a freelancer, and the person did it, and he was in India. And so we had a contract of a sort, and I told him, I asked him if he wanted to be listed as the illustrator. He said, no, these are yours. And also the images that he created, they were based on images that I had given him. So it wasn't like he just kind of used something from his own platform or that he had already had in his portfolio. He kind of created based on what I gave him to use. So that kind of made a difference in it as well.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's go. I don't have any pending questions. We have quite a few people. We have 30 people in this session. So go ahead and feel free to pop in your questions in the Q&A or raise your hand. I will go with my next question, and let's talk about, because I think one of the issues that many authors or writers who are trying to transition to authorship struggle with, I know this is a question I get a lot, is about just getting projects done. How do you get to the finish line? And so I will put that question to, is there anybody on the panel that just kind of wants to jump in and share their response to that?
I can respond to that. This is Chris Lisa.
Okay.
Okay, so I started writing at the same time that I was also homeschooling my children, and my children are still homeschooled. And so writing for the past 10 years or so while homeschooling has been very, very hard. And now we're in quarantine for most of the time. And so everyone's at home, including my spouse, and it's even harder because I usually go out somewhere else. Pre-pandemic, I was going to the YMCA to write because they give childcare for 3 hours a day. And I didn't have that luxury anymore because the YA shut down, or the YMCA shut down. So it took me about a year to figure out how to get projects done in this new environment. And what has happened with me is I use a method called the Pomodoro Method, and I can type it in the chat. It's called Pomodoro Method, and it's very easy. You could Google the word. Basically, you just set a timer for 25 minutes, and you just do focused work on a timer for 25 minutes, and then you take a 5-minute break. And I think you do that 3 or 4 times, and then you could take a longer break, or forever how many Pomodoros it takes, or 25-minute segments it takes for you to write. And so I've done that And it takes me now, I've timed myself, it takes me about two Pomodoros or two 25-minute increments to get in my daily word count, which is about 1,000 words. And so that's helped me, just having a focused time, no internet, no computer, no social media. And I know that for 25 minutes I can just work. And then after that, I can do something else. And that's helped me become more productive in this environment, this new way of living. And so there you go.
Okay, that's great, and I agree. Didn't think about Pomodoro, but I do writing sprints. Time 25 minutes, take a break, keep writing. It is amazing. Let's put this question to Sabria. Share with us some of your ways of getting it done.
Sorry. Okay, sorry, my audio was lagging. I actually struggled with procrastination kind of a lot because I like to write when I feel like writing, and you don't necessarily feel like writing all the time. And so being in quarantine helped a lot because I had nothing to do but write and focus on my writing. But even after quarantine, and when I'm thinking about, or when I started brainstorming about a second book, it works for me. I'm someone, I can say, let's do 5 pages every day. If I need to write 20 pages by the end of the month, then I know by at least 4 days out of that month, I can write 5 pages a day. And so I'm good with daily goals for the most part. I like to see the work accumulating. And that's really helped me, just putting a small goal every day instead of saying I need to have 20 pages by 2 weeks. I can say I need to do 2 pages this day or 5 pages that day.
Okay. All right. And so I'm going to ask Bernard Powers if he would chime in, because I know that writing nonfiction and writing the types of books that you write involve a lot of research. And so I want to add another part to your response. I'm going to like you share some of your time management tips, but also kind of tell us how you manage the research and not go down the rabbit holes, and because research can take over even for like a basic fiction book. And so you're writing some pretty big nonfiction books that I would imagine require quite a bit of research. So tell us about some time management tips around that aspect of getting a project done also.
Sure, thank you. And that's always a challenge. And so one of the things that works is this in terms of getting the research done. Many people put themselves in a situation where they have a deadline that's imposed on them by others outside to produce at least certain chunks and segments of the research. And what I mean by that, for example, is if you commit to presenting a conference paper at a conference that's coming up in 6 months, you're going to submit your proposal, it's going to be accepted, and now you are under the gun to do that work to produce that conference paper. And the good thing about meetings such as that is that the attendees will be people who very frequently know a lot about the subject. They'll give you input, constructive criticism. And the point is that you would have completed a chunk of that research by the deadline for that conference paper. Now, in terms of the actual writing, one of the things that I do is when I'm working on a writing project, I really write primarily in the evening, because for the most part during the daytime I have meetings, or when I was teaching I was in the classroom and so on. So you really should know what your greatest time of productivity is. And so for me, I worked in the evening and very late into the evening. Sometimes that really meant into the wee hours of the morning. And I'm still a person from the old school who takes written notes. So my research is on note cards of various kinds. And as a way of organizing the material, let's say for one chapter, I will, after I've done enough, after I've conducted enough research to put together a whole chapter, then what I do is I use those note cards and I lay them out physically on a table or a floor and essentially shift them about so that I have a physical outline based on these several piles of note cards on the various subjects. And then I go through and begin to write, moving from one pile to the next pile. And I've found that technique works very well. So two parts: you put yourself under the gun for the deadline to do that conference paper on a particular subject, and then secondly, physically arranging the material in a way that the paper kind of begins to write itself, or at least it begins to organize itself.
Okay. All right. Let's see. We don't have another question yet, so I'm going to also give that question to you, San.
Yes. Well, of course, everyone's story is going to be different. I self-published, and I reached out to a self-publishing consultant. And the first question they ask is, your deadlines. When do you want to have your book published? And so we set that target date and worked backwards, setting dates to meet. And it was kind of like having an accountability partner, which was wonderful because there were times when I wasn't motivated to meet via Zoom because it was during the pandemic. Actually, I was sick and I wasn't motivated to meet, but we had the date set and they would call and say, hey, you ready to jump on? And it kind of motivated me to go ahead and push through. So I advise everyone to definitely have an accountability partner, share your goals, set time frames.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you so much. And as a writing coach myself, I've written, like I said, I have 16 novels published as Rhonda McKnight. I have a few things published under a pen name, and I've done some ghostwriting. I'm also a writing coach. And so one of the first things that I do share with my clients is that you do need an accountability partner. Sometimes being accountable to yourself is just not enough to get it done. And so I know that I have for 13 years had the same two accountability partners who, and one of us, we use technology, figure out a way that works for you in terms of accountability, because we're all different. What I do with my accountability partners is we actually use an app that's like a walkie-talkie app, and we rather than text messages. And so this is not invasive. Everyone answers when they have time to answer. So you send a message, you say, how many words did you get written yesterday? What are your goals for today? We check in with each other pretty much on a daily basis and then a weekly basis. With my clients, I know it's usually weekly. Whatever works for you, but I do advise you to have an accountability partner. If it's a writer, that's awesome. Writers understand writers. It doesn't always have to be a writer. It can just be some other person who also has some kind of goal that they're working towards, so that you two are working together and helping each other strive and get to that next level. So that's a thing that I do. So definitely, I'm not a person who talks about time management. I don't think that I've done poorly at managing time in the past. I'm 54, so for probably, 50 years. But what I've learned in the last 10 years is that I have to manage myself. And so, because life happens, people get sick, people die, projects come up at work, there are always things that are going to compete for your time. But if I manage myself in terms of how much television I watch, what I eat. I mean, because really, even your diet can affect your productivity and with respect to being a writer. Um, Things that I know that encroach on my time. If I can manage me, then I can be more productive. And so that's sort of my thing. Some people may say that is time management, but I don't think it is. I think it's managing Rhonda and making sure that Rhonda gets done what she needs to get done. So, so we've gotten some great advice on sharing things about time. So let me hop to this question because I think this is a really important one with respect to, because I know a lot of times people, as they transition from writer to author, one of the biggest concerns that an author can have is selling books. And so, we don't have time to really delve into marketing. That's a whole nother, marketing and promotion is a whole nother piece. But let's kind of talk about networking. And I'd like some of the people in the panel to share what they have done to build relationships, perhaps, that help them to get to their readers. Okay, so with that, let's start with Seisha, if you'd like to share, or anyone on the panel who wants to take it after Seisha, just let me know. Just raise your hand. I have to call on you. It's not like first grade. So let's go
Okay.
with you.
The question was a mouthful. Can you say one more time?
What kind of things have you done to build relationships with authors that have helped you to be able to market your books, to get your books out or word out, or even just to build the network that you have to keep you on the path, as a new writer, as a new author?
As a new author, honestly, I have not actually connected with a whole lot of authors here in Charleston or anywhere necessarily. I did connect with some on social media through some different groups on Facebook, not so
Okay.
much on Instagram because I'm not on there as often, but mostly just word of mouth. A lot of my family members and friends, when they found out that I had published a book, they kind of ran with it. They picked up the momentum and were excited and were like pushing me to do more. And every time there's always someone who will say, keep writing, don't stop writing, keep writing. This is great, keep writing. And so that kind of pushed me to keep going. And like I said, friends and family, just word of mouth, spreading it around, saying that, like I had a book. They would invite me to come and speak to kids in their children group at churches, at different churches or at different schools and organizations. They would invite me to come and speak to the kids about writing. And so just going out and doing that and not charging to do it, just getting out there and talking to kids about writing and just being there, showing my face and showing my book, it really helped build a network of people and friends who would push me to keep going. But I'm looking forward to definitely connecting with more authors, especially locally, through being involved in this Black Ink Festival this year. So.
Okay. All right. Do we have someone else who wants to share on that? I know Press Lasub does an amazing job at building relationships with authors because that's how I met her. So maybe you can share a little bit about that, Press Lasub.
Sure. Building relationships, I would say for me, it's taken as much time as I've learned to write to also network and connect with other authors and people in the publishing industry. So I started writing fiction seriously in 2008. And so I've also, at the same time that I did that, I started joining professional writing organizations. I've been a member of the American Christian Fiction Writers at one point. I'm not a member of their organization anymore, but I'm also a member of the Romance Writers of America. So what I did, and I also connect through the Christian Book Lovers Retreat, which is another group that promotes Christian fiction by primarily African American authors, but it's open to all Christian fiction. So what I've done is, at the same time that I started wanting to write, which was many, many years ago, I also joined these professional writing organizations in the genre that I wanted to write in. And while I was in those organizations, I volunteered for some things, but I want to caution you against over volunteering yourself. So be selective about what you volunteer for. But I volunteered and I was on different committees. For example, for the Romance Writers of America, I was on their diversity committee at one point. I was on their national newsletter committee at one point. I was on their ethics committee at one point. And through just my volunteering, I got to interact with New York Times bestselling authors, Rita Award-winning authors, and just work with them just on different things that have to impact that organization or the industry. And that's how they got to know me and the type of person I am and how I work with people. Also, like for example, like Rhonda mentioned, the Christian Book Lovers Retreat is a great organization. They have an annual conference, which is now virtual because of the pandemic, but they have a great Facebook group where there's lots of interaction there, where I've met a lot of people who I would say are my target readership. Black Christian women who love to read fiction. I was like, this is like these are the people that I write for. And so this is a great way for me to connect with them. And also other writers who write in the same genre as I write. So at the same time that I was writing or learning to write, I was volunteering and putting my name out there as someone who's helpful, professional, and is working my way up the ranks of publishing. Another opportunity, it could be like joining or entering writing contests. If your name finals in writing contests, then your name is also put out there that way. And that's the way I've networked. It's taken me, like I said, I started in 2008, 13 years to build relationships. And it's proven helpful because I've had at different points in my career, published authors say, I can recommend my agent to you. Like I could put in a good word for with my agent. I've had people say that to me, or I could pass your work along to my editor, things like that. So building those, I call it soft relationships, can lead to something else. So that's how I've done it. I joined the professional writing organizations. I volunteered selectively, and while at the same time I was working on my craft. So there you go.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that with respect to this question, it really depends on what your goals are as a writer, as a published author. We don't all have the same goals. If you've written a book, it's a passion project. It's sort of like however many sell. I've self-published this. This is just like a dream come true to hold my book. Clearly, you're not a person who, needs to hit the ground running, finding resources and avenues to market and do all the things. But if you have a publishing contract with a traditional publisher who said, hey, like we sent you this advance check, we want to sell these books, you can't, even though they do market your book to a certain extent, a lot of the work also falls on the author regardless. And so you have to have a plan for how you're going to sell those books. And often your peers are one of your greatest resources because authors will share your books and your book release in their newsletter. They'll share on your social media. They will tell their friends about it. The network of authors is just amazing. I can tell you that from being published for, over 10 years, traditionally published, and then of course, indie, that if it wasn't for author friends, people, that have embraced me in the literary community, I would have failed a long time ago. I mean, I just needed that support, particularly with my traditionally published titles. And so building relationships is one of the things that I tell people. Writing can be very solitary. I know what it's like. You're in your writing cocoon. You just want to go there. You want to write, get the book done, be creative, and then go somewhere and read, because most of us are like, readers. But sometimes we have to step out of our comfort zone and build those relationships with people who will help us. Because honestly, other authors will help you. They will embrace you. They will, they will just really become a part of your family. There are several people in this on this panel right now who are like sisters to me. Like, I could not do this thing without them. So I encourage you as much as possible, if you have a goal of selling as many books as you would like to sell, if you feel like you want your reach to be broad, to make sure that you, I mean, there are other ways. I'm going to have Vanessa come in and talk a little bit about working with a publicist, because, you know, you can pay somebody to do the work too, but there's nothing like the community of creative people who are in the same space as you, sharing and, you know, kind of being your cheerleaders, you know, because writers, like, we need therapists, we need cheerleaders, we need a lot, you know. Being creative is not can be emotionally draining. Getting feedback from, I mean, because you're putting your work out into the world. You're getting feedback from perfect strangers, and we all know that we live in a time where everybody is not friendly and nice about the comments that they have. And so even a person with the toughest skin, can get tired of some of the different feedback that they have, that they get from different readers and reviewers and places like that. So with that, I'm not gonna take over sharing. I'm gonna ask Vanessa to chime in, because she has shared a comment about, with respect to promoting her work, and that is with working with a PR specialist. So how about you share a little bit about that, Vanessa?
Okay, just a little bit about that. I work full time, and I write instructional training, and I do board of governance training. So, that's a lot of time to there's a lot of time to put into promoting and marketing my book, that I thought, oh my gosh, I'm just going to wear myself out. So my cousin, who was actually my copywriter, she reviewed and gave me feedback on my manuscript, suggested a PR consultant, and her name is Sherry Woods. So Sherry, I'm saying your name, Sherry Woods, who said, well, you need help in promoting this. So actually, Sherry was the one who was able to get me in this venue. So I thank her for that. Yeah, it costs a little money to do that, but it certainly is worthwhile when I can get exposure that I never thought I would get exposure. I did all my marketing and PR as a self-publisher with my first book, Paint the Sky Purple. And, the church ladies and the community groups, the book clubs, they were all after, me trying to do a book signing. But that was 10 years ago. That was long before COVID. Now we're in a different world. So you have to really, really use all the tools in the box to get out there. I'm not even on Instagram. And it's like, wow, that just seems like so much for me. I've got Twitter, I've got LinkedIn, which I use for business, which I put stuff out there, and Facebook. So I'm using all my avenues, but I also needed that help of the PR specialist. So I appreciate being able to share that feedback, because, she got me in places where I probably would not have. And I've used my network to get me into places too that she didn't know.
Awesome. And let me ask you, Bernard, if you could share a little, in particular, having written a nonfiction book, can you share a little bit about what your experience are with networking with other authors, or perhaps even just kind of getting your body of work out to the public?
Sure. And let me start off by saying that one very highly accomplished and very public scholar once told me something many years ago, and she said, people write these books, and they think that the ideas are so compelling that the books are just going to jump off of the shelves into people's laps, and they're going to buy them. But she says, no, it doesn't work like that. And you better always have a box of those books in the trunk of your car, so that you have them available. And so I have always, I've always followed that rule. And I've had some experiences with some publishers where the marketing departments for some publishers, and you think that they're going to make sure that the books arrive at the conference that you're attending and speaking at, but you better have some copies of that book yourself, because you cannot always rely upon them. But I have found that it's necessary to go around, in addition to networking with individual authors, and that's great, and conferences, writers conferences, and then academic conferences. And so I go to typically history conferences and African American studies conferences. The publishers will be there, other authors will be there. But in addition, I will go around to bookstores, independent bookstores, as well as the chain stores, Barnes & Noble, for example. And if they don't have a copy of my book, I will have a flyer. Will ask to speak to the manager of the store, introduce myself, and give them the flyer and ask them to please carry it. I'm a local author, and so on and so forth. And I have found that that really does work. And I've had on a number of occasions had my book adopted and marketed, particularly during, let's say, the period that we're running up to now. We're approaching African American History Month now, and so one of the things that I found is that sometimes these bookstores, they only have certain kinds of books on display for Black History Month, and to kind of broaden the scope, I make sure that I try to get mine added. But also, if there are, and again, in my case, I write history, so if there are preservation organizations that have stores, historic sites that have stores, I go to those places also. So it really is a matter of making personal contacts, establishing those relationships. And then once you do that, for example, with a museum or historical society, and I'm a member and a supporter of a number of such organizations, they will invite you to come out, do lectures for the board, for the membership. And this is another way to get your name out there. And if they have not invited me to do a book signing as a part of my presentation, and they frequently do, I still have some copies of the book available to talk to members of the audience about. So it really does come down to building relationships.
Awesome. Okay, that's a great answer. It does. Relationship building at every level, with authors, with readers, and we learned that from the panel that I think was held yesterday, about building relationships with authors, with readers, and bookstores. And we do have some bookstores who are sponsors of this event, so make sure to check out some of the local bookstores that are listed in the arena and support them, because we need to support Black bookstores. Otherwise, we won't have Black bookstores, and then we won't have anyone who perhaps cares about our Black books. So always support Black bookstores. We have a really great question in the Q&A, and I'm going to go ahead and read this from Cleo Scott Brown. The question is, when you are only getting royalties, okay, she has found it kind of cost prohibitive to promote because she's getting so little per book. And so one of the questions that her question is, what do you suggest? So the book is not making enough in royalties, and so she kind of feels like, there's no money to promote this book. And so I'm going to have a few of my panelists answer that question. I've got some answers, but I'm going to wait and see if everybody else has shares before I chime in with on the royalties, because being someone who's been traditionally published, I've also had to deal with receiving royalties for an older book. Like I have books that are older that I still like to promote, and the royalties, the advance is long gone. I spent that a long time ago. So, but I'm going to go ahead and let, who would like to share? I'm going to put that question out for whoever wants to share that.
I can share on that.
Okay.
Okay, so as far as cost-effective marketing, there's two things that I do. Is I use my own social media to promote my books. So I kind of studied, I got a little bit more savvy on social media, and excuse me. And so I use my social media to promote. I use my Instagram stories as well, my Facebook stories, so that I'm not always putting a post out there about my books. But your own social media is one. And if you have networks in the genre that you write in, you can contact book lovers who love to read books, other authors who have larger platforms than you, and you can ask them to promote your book on their platform. So that's another way to do it. Another thing that you could do, which it's kind of like the slow and steady route, is build up your own author newsletter. And the people who sign on to your newsletter are the people who really want to hear from you. And so you can use your newsletter as another outlet to promote your books. If you have extra time on your hands, then you could learn how to pitch to media on your own. And find different media outlets and pitch to them, find their contacts, and create a press release if you want, and pitch to them on your own. If you are at a traditional publishing house, then I would also suggest that you work with the publicist that's been assigned to you to brainstorm ways to get your book out there. If you see an opportunity but you don't have that soft connection with that outlet, then you can definitely ask your publicist to say, hey, can you contact these people for me? I would like to be on this platform. And I've done that. And fortunately, they've done that for me when I've asked. So you always have to ask. Don't be afraid to ask. And so that's something that you can do as well.
Okay. All right. So we actually are over time. So I'm going to just add that I think that one of the things you can do is just take advantage of everything free that you can do. There are lots of things that you can do to promote a book that are free. Free takes time, obviously. You're paying for it with your time, but don't give up on your book. Don't let your book die. Every author should have a budget for promotion, because once you set that budget for promotion, whatever it is, if it's, $300 this year, or if it's $2,500 this year, or $5,000, whatever it is, if you are strategic about your promotion, if you use things that are measurable as much as possible, if you buy a certain ad and you try, if you, let me just say, if you monitor the things that you have done to see what is most productive for you in terms of sales. There's some ads you can buy that you won't get a sale from. There's some that maybe you bought an ad from someone a couple of years ago and it generated sales for you. You have to remember that generated sales for you, so that the next year when you're coming up with your marketing plan, you remember the things that you did this year that worked and the things that were total trash that didn't work. And so I encourage you to keep some kind of promotion journal or something to help you track what has been successful for you. Writing for local newspapers and blogs and things like all these things are free. They do take time, but they're free, and they will garner you an audience. So you have to invest in your product. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's a book, hair products, whatever. You have to make some investment. So you figure out what you can afford and just do the thing, but be intentional about what you're doing, measure what you're doing, keep records. Again, like I said, if you network with other authors, they can share with you some of the free things that they do. People will let you swap in newsletters like Press Lisa just shared. And so those things will get you sales. And the more sales you have, then eventually the royalty checks will get bigger. The royalty checks can't get bigger if the book is not promoted. So you just have to figure out what you will and can do and how much money you have and be consistent. So with that, we're going to have to wrap up. We don't have another question. We're over time. I just want to say thank you to all the authors for their excellent advice. There's still an opportunity to visit their virtual booths in the arena area. I know that I'll be spending some time in the arena this afternoon if anyone wants to reach out to me. If any of the authors have office hours, please announce them here right in the feed. I know we had a couple of questions about how you can get each of the authors' books. The authors can share links here in the feed, but also, like I said, visit them in the arena. I'm sure that all of us would be more than happy to tell you how to get our books. And so we thank you again, and we hope that you enjoy the remainder of the festival. Everyone have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thanks to all my panelists.